Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Thursday, May 24th, 2018. Let's take a look at our solar conditions right now. Our solar wind speed is at 428.9 kilometers per second with a density of 5. And taking a look at our sun, we do have a little bit of activity going on here. Taking a look at AR 2710, which is dying at last check. 2711 has rapidly grown, and basically SPACEWEATHER.com is saying that solar minimum is taking a day off as we see sunspot number 30. And also there's another active region that we want to talk about as well. But first, our KP indices are at 1 and a max of 2. And here is the SDO. Let's go ahead and take a look at it in motion. And of course, I'm going to get out my handy dandy little circle. Now, the last time we did a broadcast, which was Tuesday night, I had this circled, highlighted, as it looked pretty nasty. After talking to some of our fellow mates over in our GSM chat, Starman at 2712, predicting could see some M-class solar flare action. Could. Right now it looks promising for that kind of a solar flare at this point. But for sure, SpaceWeather.com has a titled article says solar minimum take the day off, and I wanted to read a little bit about this real quick. Lack of sunspots is a sign of solar minimum, and for the most of 2018, the face of the sun has been persistently blank. Today, the solar minimum is taking a day off. 2 sunspot groups are emerging on opposite sides of the sun. Now, astronomers with safely filtered solar telescopes are encouraged to train their optics on these regions. The one on the right is growing rapidly, and the one on the left is crackling with B and C class flares. Now, that's the one that they are circling here into the right here. And that's where we think we might have a decent chance at some M-class flares. But I wanted to point out here, SpaceWeather.com is one of the websites that I'd say that is almost pretty much telling everyone that we are heading into a deep solar minimum with statements like this. Such relatively weak flares would be seldom mentioned during a solar max, but any flare is remarkable during the current period of deepening solar minimum. Yes, once again, we are seeing that word and that term being used. Now, it's not saying grand solar minimum, but if you click on the link, this takes us to a story that was written by Dr. Tony Phillips. I think we covered this actually back on May 1st, talking about how sunspots are vanishing faster than ever. I encourage everyone to read this article. This all but confirms what we have talked about for many, many months now here on the Grand Solar Minimum channel. But back to our space weather news here. Our TSI readings are sitting at a 1360.727, and that was for May 16th, 2018. Still interesting though. Back to the solar minimum part. It's not unusual. We saw a little bit of increased activity on the sun back in August and September of 2017, but it has been pretty quiet. We've seen 80 days without spots, and it'll be interesting to watch what happens excuse me, in the next several weeks as forecasters, or I've read it, not in stone, but I have read such forecasts that are saying that we may not see a sunspot from the month of June of 2018 through April of 2019. So interesting to see if this is the last hoorah from the sun before it takes a big nap. We'll keep our eyes on it. And some good news here, and let's hope this is also proven on humans as well, but they found a breakthrough drug that could prevent brain damage caused by cosmic rays from space travel in deep space. Now, we all know that space they want to send someone to Mars within the next 15 years, and there's been several studies that are talking about increased cosmic ray and more radiation that folks that are experiencing now at the International Space Station. So that makes us wonder, when it used to be 1,000 days that we could be in space, now they're saying 700 days consecutively before it becomes too dangerous for you. But now they have tested some mice, and I'll just read a little bit here. And it says, a week later, some of the mice were treated for 15 days with this drug right now that's not approved yet, but they're testing it. It's a Berkeley-based pharmaceutical company, Plexion Incorporated. The irradiated animals initially displayed no cognitive defects, but after 3 months, they began showing signs of memory impairment. Remarkably, the animals that had been treated with the PLX 5622 soon after being exposed to radiation performed just like healthy mice on a memory task. The researchers examined the animals' brains and showed that while the brains of the untreated mice showed major activation in cells called microglia, I believe it's called, part of the brain's immune system, the brains of treated mice looked like normal. They're also connecting this activated microglia to Alzheimer's disease. So the hope is not only will this tackle any kind of radiation damage from space travel, but they're encouraged that this could be a new drug that could also help out people that have any kind of neurodegenerative type disorders such as Alzheimer's, not neurotic. Link will be in the description. I just thought I'd share that with everyone because we keep talking about how, more space travel, more cosmic rays, more space radiation exposure, not good. We've seen articles that say that alters DNA. So this is a good sign that we are starting to develop, hopefully, a medicine that can help us in more than one way. And I saw this article on What's Up With That, talking about traffic jams in the jet stream, blame for abnormal weather pattern. What they're talking about is these blocking patterns. And basically, the reason why we see things like Hurricane Harvey and such, we have a blocking situation going on. This is what this article is basically telling us. So whenever we have a blocking, that stalls out our jet streams from going eastward, and therefore we will see the continuous moisture that continues to fall over and over and over again. And you tap that in with highly amounts of cosmic rays in our atmosphere. Well, that's the recipe for that biblical 100-year flood or worse. So I just thought this was an article interesting. You guys can read this. I'll leave the link in the description. But it talks about that what they found in their jet stream patterns. It's not going to help them with their short-term weather predictions, but it is going to help them look at long-term patterns, and which may include areas that will see more droughts and more floods. And speaking of floods, we got lots to talk about when it comes to floods. And this is kind of an overview here. Storms across northern Europe have caused surface flooding in Belgium, Germany, Netherlands, and France, including the capital, Paris. I'll get into that here just in a minute. Actually, I'm not going to share all of this. 50 millimeters in just 1 hour in France. Now, also, it's known to mention that they had a year's worth of cherry tree crop completely destroyed as they saw hail the size of 3.9 inches, I believe, in diameter, which just wow. There's something you don't see every day. That's going to go down in the history books. It's a beautiful image. And also, Mari wanted me to pass along as well that there were over, I can't remember where it was here. See, Belgium, we had storms of May 22nd that caused flooding, damages to over 100 interventions, flooding everywhere. And there was a stat that I wanted to read off. There was like 14,000 lightning strikes in this one storm. Here, Germany also reporting heavy rain, more flooding here. And then we have Netherlands also reporting more floods, damaging homes and structures there. But there was a storm that we had as well across Europe, and I'll have to find that stat again. I do apologize. I believe it might have been France. But we had 14,000 lightning strikes with this one thunderstorm out here. Again, and Mari said it right as soon as she read the stat. Well, that just means the atmosphere must be full of highly charged particles, and bingo. That's exactly what's happened. And here is the more about the Paris flash floods. Streets look like rivers. I'll go ahead and show. This was the hail that fell in the beginning of the storm. I mean, it looks like it snowed, and then, of course, the rains follow, and then you have the melt from the hail, which caused the river-like flooding. Incredible footage here. Inside buildings and subways, water everywhere. Just to get an idea of what's going on, this is more flash flooding in France, northern France. Wow. That reminds me of Anakar, Turkey, where the guy was sitting on top of his car. Here we go. This is what I wanted to get to. According, the storm dropped hailstones as large as 3.9 inches, and more than 2.3 inches of rain fell in just 30 minutes, causing serious damage to crops. So almost 2.5 inches of rain fell in 30 minutes, and they also received 3.9 inches of hail. As large as 3.9, not just the hail accumulation, but the stones themselves were almost 4 inches in diameter. So yeah, that's going to destroy some crops. We'll leave the description in the link. Again, thanks to the watchers. Very good on the coverage here, the footage. And here we have our storm that many of us have been talking about for the weekend of Memorial Day. Now, the forecasts are now starting to come together, and it's looking more and more like this storm is definitely hitting in the Gulf. I was going to go over more of this during our weather part of this, but I thought I'd just go ahead and showers and thunderstorms along with strong gusty winds remain primarily over the adjacent waters of the northwestern Caribbean Sea. Environmental conditions are forecast to become more conducive for development through early next week, and a subtropical or tropical depression is likely to form by late Saturday, May 26, over the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. And I know we've showed you two different models. The Euro version has this thing heading more into Louisiana, and right now the track certainly does appear that it is making its way straight towards New Orleans, Louisiana, maybe possibly Houston. Again, at least almost 10 days to 2 weeks ago, Thor News, I do watch his channel. I am amused at times, and he is good about, if anything, just giving that early warning awareness. So once again, he did say that this storm was going to be in the Gulf near the Houston area or possibly New Orleans. So hats off to him for calling it. He just trying to raise awareness like we are here. And here is a little bit of graphic of what we're looking at from this storm here from NOAA. And just, it really intensifies over the last several hours here too. Wow. And I wanted to show you the, here we go. This is the image I wanted to show everybody. The amounts of rain that's expected throughout this weekend. And this is later in the weekend into Saturday. Oh, this is into Thursday. Look at this, guys. Bright orange, so that's in the 7-inch range. So if you look right here, according to this thing, we are talking about possibility of 7 to 10 inches of rain possibly in this region right here. And New Orleans is right there in that cusp of the 4 to 6 inch range. So again, if you guys have plans in that region for the holiday weekend, the southeast does not look like the place you want to be, all the way from South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, New Orleans, and all of Florida. It does look like a total washout for this weekend for you guys down there. So hopefully you guys have plans already in place. I haven't heard of any evacuations just yet, because this isn't supposed to be a hurricane just yet as well. But there are some forecasters out there. I know Mike, the weather page, Mike, SpaghettiModels.com, he's been covering this very well. He's saying that he would not be surprised if this storm developed into a brief hurricane right before it does make landfall. So we'll have to keep our eyes on that. and over 300 homes destroyed after big cracks appear in Uganda. Now, again, this is another story where we hear about heavy rainfall and then these cracks just forming in the ground afterwards. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's bull. I know Mari did a piece on this a few months ago where it showed the reason why we saw these cracks. It was due to water erosion from heavy rains. And that's what they're claiming is happening here again. So I'll leave the link in the description. You guys can check out the footage for yourself. Now, they're saying that these cracks are nowhere near the size of the ones that are in Kenya, but I will read something that's kind of interesting what they're talking about. They're describing the rift zones and defining those and everything. Here at the end, it says the rift represents a narrow zone where the African plate is in the process of splitting into two tectonic plates called the Somali plate and the Nubian plate at the rate of 6 to 7 millimeters annually. So yearly, this rift is splitting these plates, and the movement is about 1/4 inch a year. So that's where I believe in where they're saying this heavy rain started this erosion in the first place. And if you've got movement like that and these cracks with heavy rain and pressure on the soil, it makes sense to me. So yeah, we have earthquakes out in that region, and I know there might have been arguments about possible seismic or volcanic activity, but again, this is just one of the situations where I think it's common sense for most, maybe not for all, but for me, I think it's understandably heavy rains, erosion, and the ground movement will create these openings in our soil. We'll leave the link in the description. You can read and see for yourself. Still talking about some tropical cyclones here. We mentioned this one too a couple days ago. There's 8 missing from this unusual storm that's hit Sumatra, Yemen, and Oman. This area already seen one storm, and now we are talking about this possibility making a Category 2 or 3 hurricane equivalent such event. This storm has brought strong winds and thunderstorms, causing severe flooding and damage to houses across the small island of Sumatra. Some of the homes have been completely destroyed as the center of Mikuno moved just east of the island. Generally, the storm's worst on the eastern sides. The situation is extremely critical. Former governor of the island. The roads are flooded. We cannot get out of the northern coastal town of Hadabu to see what is going on in other areas of the island. Also, the strong winds have intercepted telecommunications, so we are almost isolated. 4 of the 8 missing from a crew on board of a boat that sank at the Arabian Sea and are suspected to be dead. At least 3 vessels have gone off the radar. So, and here's the track of this storm. By the time it makes landfall, it will increase to a Cat 2 type, but then by the time it makes landfall, it will be a Category 1. However, still a rare storm. We'll keep an eye on this. Again, the link will be in the description. And kind of stay in this region real quick. Now, I've got an update on this too, but if you go to flood list, you'll see here Sri Lanka, 12 dead, 27,000 displaced as floods worsen. This was as of today. Earlier today, over 80,000 people have now been affected by floods in Sri Lanka. According to disaster management officials, more heavy rain has fallen since the flooding began on May 20th, and 12 people have now lost their lives. And that talks about as many as 84,000 people and 18,000 families have been affected. 2,500 homes have been damaged, 29 completely destroyed, and as many as almost 30,000 people have been evacuated due to threats from flooding and landslides that are being housed in 194 welfare centers. And then we have also military personnel and police are also there helping the situation. A little bit of the update here. We went from 80,000 people to monsoon rains have caused floods across much of Sri Lanka, leading to the deaths of more than 13 people and displacement of 400,000. So earlier today, we went from 83,000 to 400,000 people now are displaced because of this storm. This is not for views or sympathy. This is just to reveal the situation around the world. A lot of people look at footage like this and it's heartbreaking. They don't have the resources that some of us have the convenience to. And when places like this get hit hard like this, it becomes very difficult to live in, and it'd be difficult if this happened in Tennessee. So just heartbreaking to see more and more of these deadly floods taking over this part of the world right now. And an update on Kilauea volcano eruption update, of course. Can't have a show without that, but the gas emissions tripled. Blue burning flame of methane gas observed over Hawaii. Fissure 6 through 22 continued erupting lava fountains on May 23rd and 24th. The fountains from Fissure 22 feed a single lava channel that reaches the coast just north of McKenzie State Park. The actual point of entry has continued shifting to the west. Fountains erupted from fissures 5, 6, 13, and 19 continue to feed a lava flow advancing south along the west side of the fissure 22, which flows and may reach the ocean in the hours ahead. Fissure 17 continues weak spattering. Fissure 8 reactivated briefly yesterday morning to erupt two small Puejo flows over the initial flow. Now, here is a map right now of where the lava is flowing out, and it's heading to the ocean as we speak. So again, thanks again to the watchers, giving us a good update almost daily. Descriptive mats. I can't believe how much has actually continued to grow. I remember thinking that we had a lot of fissures out here when it was at 16, and now we're talking about fissures 22. So we'll continue to watch this as it continues to erupt. And again, scientists have predicted that this could be something that we could be looking at for the next months, several months possibly, at least weeks, which it has been now. So we'll keep our eyes on this as well. And more from the White House. Trump officials discuss whether to ignore climate data. This is getting interesting, guys. White House officials discuss the possibility of ignoring federal climate data according to an internal memo that highlights the Trump administration's struggles with the established climate change science. The Washington Post, which nobody really cares about, reports that a memo drafted in September by Michael Canatazero, then the White House Special Assistant for Domestic Energy and Environmental Policy, discussed three options for dealing with federal scientists' data about the effects of man-made climate change. The options included highlighting uncertainties in the data, reviewing the scientific studies under the Administrative Procedure Act, or simply ignoring them altogether, the Post reports. None of the options suggested by Catanzaro involved publicly exposing the dangers of climate change highlighted in the data. Now, White House officials have not taken formal stance on man-made climate change, and the Trump administration has faced criticism in the past for removing references to climate change from official websites. I'd say that's pretty much an official stance, if you ask me. The words warming and man-made climate change are being removed at record speed right now. So I'd say that the administration has made their stance on man-made global warming. And here we go again. While it's been extensive research and a host of published reports on climate change, clear gaps remain, including our understanding of the role of human activity and what we can do about it, which we know you can't do anything about it. I don't understand how much more has to come out. And this article I originally found this on What's Up With That, and it led me to this link here to thehill.com. So this story has been shared 1,100 times. I encourage everyone to share this. I'm tweeting it right now as we speak here live on the air because, again, I know there's people out there who want to say that Trump's an idiot and, of course, he's going to ignore the climate data and all that. And I just hear it now. I can hear it. But I'm telling you guys, as much criticism as he is facing, he's not going to make these moves without some of his best people in the cabinet right now that he does have doing their best to get the best answers for him. And right now, they're saying the same thing that we're saying. There's too many gaps. There's too many uncertainties. They're starting to see, NASA came out with an article that talks about, CO2 being a greening effect and not a warming effect. We all know that temperature comes from 95% oceans and 5% atmosphere. Which, by the way, I wanted to take a look at this really fast. Thanks to the Starman bringing this to our attention on Twitter and in our chat. But this is the fastest. Now, this is a up and down type anomaly situation, so it's not unusual for it to go below baseline. But I find it a little concerning, I guess, a little bit, that we are looking at such a drop from the last 21 days. We're somewhere around over a full degree drop. So we are almost below 7 right now. We're at minus 0.648 below baseline in the northern Atlantic. And so that's something to keep an eye on for many reasons, if you like warm climate anyway. And it's even being displayed here on the map. And this is actually the most blue shaded area I've seen in a while. I remember when the Starman actually first alerted me to keeping an eye on this as well, and it was clearly nowhere near as much shaded blue. So something we'll continue to watch. We've heard all kinds of stories about the temperature, the conveyor belt being disrupted, it's slowing down. Some people are saying it's not. Some people saying it is. Time will tell, people, and so will the data. And we'll go ahead and check out. I did not bring. Well, you know what? I should have brought up Wendy. Darn it. How about I do this? We'll just go to black. Just bear with me, folks. This is just a temporary situation here. I apologize. I wanted to be ready and I wasn't. That's the trouble with live. Mari, why don't you go ahead and say hello to everybody?
Hello, everybody. I just love you people in the chat, every single one of you. And a big thank you to Rob. He did a super chat, Jake, and he wants us to take the kids out for ice cream after the next ball game. Because some people don't realize that Jake is undefeated coach right now. We're 3 games won this season, just so you know. I know it's not weather fun and space weirdness, but
well, I'll tell you what, it is weather fun. Not really. It's May 24th. Last night we had a game and we had temperatures that were right around 61 before game time, and by the time we saw the last pitch of the game, we were sitting at probably in the low 50s when the wind was blowing. You're talking about tremendous. It felt very chilly. It did not feel like a baseball game. So thank you for the mention. I'm very proud of these guys. These are a 10-year-old team here, and the first 3 games they've come through and had 2 big wins and a come from behind victory last night. So I'm a little proud, I guess. But thank you, Rob. I'm sure the kids will definitely like the ice cream. So hopefully we get some warm temperatures to enjoy that ice cream with, which I am going to show our temperature map here. So our next ball game isn't until June 2nd, but I'm sure we'll treat them early, and we could do that probably this coming weekend here for us in New York as well. We will see temperatures into the mid 70s to almost mid 80s in certain parts. Go ahead and zoom in just a little bit, give you a picture of the idea of what the weather is going to look like this weekend, Memorial Day weekend, as we heat up throughout the day. Looks like we'll get into the upper 70s as our daytime high, and then we kind of cool off a little bit here on Sunday. A little bit of unexpected cooling, actually. The part of the state we're going to be in is almost going to be in the 60s by the time we get to the end of the weekend. So interesting. Meanwhile, in the Midwest, though, it is definitely going to be pool time for you guys this weekend, and this is Sunday's highs go ahead and move it on to Monday, our Memorial Day forecast. And again, the pools are definitely going to be needed here in the Midwest, into the plains, and unfortunately not so much pool weather for you guys out there in the Northwest unless you live in that weird spot called Yakima. Other than that, it's nowhere near pool weather for you guys. California, Arizona, even parts of Nevada are not going to be looking at pool weather for Monday, but definitely hot in the southern part of the country, in the Southwest. Texas bringing the heat for sure, and it almost feels like they're probably the ones delivering the heat at this point. But while we're down here, let's go ahead and take a look at this weekend potential for our hurricane or our tropical system. And here's where they have it for Monday. Now, it's just now making landfall on Monday, the eastern part of this. And as we move this further a little bit onto Tuesday, we are all the way by Monday night into Tuesday morning. We will see Mobile, and it looks like you're going to get 3 inches of rain right off the bat from this storm. Look how tight this thing is, too, coming in on Tuesday, moving it farther inland into Jackson, Mississippi, possibly. And here's some good news about this forecast of this storm. It is not going to do what we were afraid of, and that was several runs of this forecast had this storm hovering over New Orleans over a 6-day period. And the good news is, if there is a silver lining now, we're still going to see some heavy rainfall from this system on Mississippi and Alabama side. But look at that. New Orleans, it's still a few days out. But right now, it looks like New Orleans will get spared from this particular storm, thankfully. But look at that system still living on Wednesday up into the Tennessee Valley by Thursday of next week, and kind of just hanging around. And it looks like it's going to go through Ohio, West Virginia, and possibly hit the Northeast as well. So we'll keep our eyes on this storm. Actually, let's go ahead and move up and see where they've got this going. And it does appear to go out to D.C., Maryland, Philadelphia, and D.C. doesn't need any more rain at this point. They've had 2 different storms come through where they've seen flooding, and I think they've seen their share of rain here in the last few weeks. So otherwise, it should be a pretty decent Memorial Day weekend. Let's go ahead and just re-verify that real fast before I end this show. Saturday, we have rain chances in the Midwest, Tennessee Valley, but relatively dry throughout most of the country to start the weekend. And by the time we make it through, by the end of the weekend, a chance of rain in the northern plains, and of course there's that system in the south and the east, as it generally looks like that's going to be the wettest part of the weekend. And midweek next week, we see a big chance for moisture for most of the south and the east, and it really picks up towards the end of the week next week as well. So we'll keep our eyes on the weather here, guys. We really appreciate you tuning in and continuing to support the Grand Solar Minimum channel, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk soon.